Welcome to the fourth quarterly meeting of the Songs Community Engagement Panel. My name is Dan Stetson, and I'm the volunteer chair of the CEP. Thank you all for joining us this evening. First of all, I'm sure all of us wish to extend our thoughts and prayers who've been affected by these terrible fires. So we certainly want to keep them in our thoughts this evening. Secondly, I want to apologize for some confusion regarding the start of today's meeting due to an error on the SONGS website. Thanks for navigating the error and being with us tonight. Please note this meeting is being recorded. Our main topic for this evening is understanding funds related to SONGS decommissioning, or as Hal Holbrook said in the movie All the President's Men, follow the money. We'll also receive an update from Spent Fuel Solutions, an advocacy coalition that is the leading voice for legislative reform. A draft presentation was posted to the website a week ago. Let's thank Julia Martinez for SONGS for advancing the slides for us tonight. Next slide, please. Here you can see our agenda and speakers. After a few updates, we'll dive into the main topic. During the community update, I'll highlight the third quarter CEP follow-up actions SCE plans to cover this evening. Our CEP Vice Chair and San Clemente Mayor, Victor Cabral, and I will cover community updates. Crystal Javara, Director Community Relations for San Diego County Supervisor, and SFS Co-Chair John Desmond will share updates on a new bill to amend the Nuclear Waste Policy Act and other coalition initiatives. SCE Vice President and SONGS Chief Nuclear Officer, Fred Bailey, will cover the big picture at SONGS. After Fred, we'll have two topics that were recommended by members of the CEP. These are, first, Jose Perez, SCE Manager of Nuclear California Public Utilities Commission Affairs and Compliance, boy is that a mouthful, will deliver the SONGS funding presentation and help us to understand the difference between the three funds. I think this is a really important one. I mean, safety is always number one, but also something that's very important and something that I've really been interested all the way through this is really the flow of the money. What is this costing and where's the money going and how are we paying for things? Secondly, Manuel Camargo, of SCE Manager of Strategic Planning, will cover examples, initiatives that are responsive to input from the communities around San Onofre. Jim Petrie, SCE Manager of Decommissioning Agent Site Operations, will provide the SONGS dismantlement update. And finally, Ron Pontes, SCE Manager of Environmental Waste and Radiation Protection, will provide updates on recent topics of interest, such as the ongoing tritium monitoring and the SafeCast monitor readings. The CEP also received a letter from a member of the public prior to the meeting. Some of the items will be discussed during the course of the meetings and others will be addressed during the public comment period. An exception is related to the sea level rise, which was covered in detail on March 7, 2023, and can be found on the SONGS community website under CEP public meetings. Following the presentations, we'll take a short break and dedicate, once again, a full hour to public comment. CEP Vice Chair Victor Cabral and CEP Secretary Martha McNicholas will facilitate the public dialogue. For members of the CEP, we welcome your comments during the presentation. Fred, please tell me there's nothing else you wish to add to the agenda.
Nope, nothing to add.
Thank you, Fred. Let's go on to our next slide, please. As always, I really just want to thank all of our volunteers who serve on the CEP. I want to thank them for their continued support and interest in the SONGS decommissioning. We also have a long-serving member who is retiring and rolling off the panel. Sam Jamal, who is the community plans and liaison officer for Camp Pendleton, is stepping down. Special thanks to Sam. Next slide, please. Okay, our recent CEP3 meeting was well attended by panel members and the public, and we appreciate the continued public engagement. I want to thank our members for their feedback regarding the timing of these meetings. We took a poll and it was decided primarily to return to the 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. timeframe, but with exceptions for guest speakers from other time periods. So in other words, if we have a guest from the East Coast, we'll most probably move back to the earlier time so that we can accommodate them so that they don't have to stay up way past their bedtime. Today's meeting is via Microsoft Teams. Fred, your opening comments, please.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome to the last CEP meeting of 2024. SC appreciated the questions from the panel members and the public during our last meeting. And as you mentioned, we'll be providing updates on the Unit 2 and 3 pressurizer shipment, our tritium monitoring and mitigation efforts this evening, and the special topic is going to be with Jose on the funds related to our activities here at SONGS. Back to you, Dan.
Okay, thank you very much, Fred. Next slide, please. Please recall that we have a dedicated public comment period following the presentations. Here, you'll see the directions for participating in the public comment. As always, members of the public had the opportunity to submit comments and questions in advance, and we've been seeing those and reviewing those. Comments may be submitted via the newcoms@songs.sce.com, receive priority, and that address can be found on the meeting webpage. During the meeting, folks can submit written comments or sign up for oral comment using the online CEP form. For CEP members, if you have a question or comment, please use the raise hand icon under reactions at the top of your screen so we can identify you and make you a presenter. Also, Manuel, if I miss them, as is often the case, please remind me that someone wishes to speak. For CEP members who joined late and may not be able to see their name on the list and change their status from a guest to a presenter, and thereby allowing them to open and close the microphone. In that case, CEP members will have to use the raise hand icon for us to see their name and make a presenter for CEP members calling in audio only. To open and close your microphone, please use *6 and keep yourself muted until you wish to speak. To raise your hand by phone, CEP members should use *5. If there are questions, Martha and Victor will facilitate the public dialogue. Next slide, please. Okay, and we've got some community updates, so we'll move on to the next slide for that. Slide number 7. Thank you. During our last meeting on September 5th, we took several action items and will be providing updates on the following items. Provided updates will be on Unit 2 and 3. Remember the pressurizer shipment? Ron Pontes will do that. He will also talk about the source of the SafeCast radiation monitoring readings. Using the term liquid batch release information on the homepage will be done, replacing what was done earlier. Educate the public on water releases and other topics of interest. Multiple resources are on the SONGS community website, including the US EPA, and increase the methods of communicating 48-hour release notifications. Members of the public may now sign up for email note dates, including liquid batch releases. Victor, I believe you have a couple updates or so you'd like to provide?
Victor, you're on mute.
The story of my life this past few weeks. Just that we were the city of San Clemente is going to participate in that community website, put it on our website. We encourage some of the neighboring cities to do the same thing. And I think the second important thing is the Association of California Cities was there on October 23rd, did a site visit, which is always good when we get people to the facilities to look and learn and understand what's going on there. I think those are the two big things that have happened.
Well, Victor, isn't there a third? Didn't the vote pass for your sand?
Well, the vote did not pass. We got about 65% of the, we needed a 66 margin. So it did not pass, but we had other things that happened that were good. We got a couple $100 million, which might have it helps us, but it hurt us. It hurt the initiative, but it helped us in terms of placing more sand. We got both federal and state money to the tune of a couple $100 million. So that's all good and positive, but I think people saw that good news and said, why do we need to pass an initiative for more taxes if the federal and state are already giving it to us? So it's a working process. We're happy with the results, and we'll see what the next steps are.
Well, thank you, Victor. That's important not only certainly for the city of San Clemente, but also for, as you know, for the rail, for keeping that protection for the rail and for the shipments that are coming. So we're thankful for that. So thank you for that update.
Yeah, we did. I should also mention we did initiate a project this week where we're laying another 85,000 cubic yards of sand on our beach. 2 months ago, we laid 37,000 cubic yards in the North Beach area, and the next project is scheduled to be about 400,000 cubic yards. It'll go all the way down to Cypress Shores area. So we're protecting those tracks, which is necessary and essential.
Well, that's great. Actually, I'll be out there tomorrow with the Cal State Long Beach Shark Lab. As you know, they have a white shark acoustic receiver right off their pier. And we're going to bring it in because we don't want it to get in the way of all the dredging operations that are going on out there. So we'll be out there actually tomorrow.
All right.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, unfortunately, Supervisor Katrina Foley is unable to be with us tonight. However, we have Crystal Jabara. She is the Director of Community Relations from the Office of Supervisor Jim Desmond, San Diego County 5th District and Spent Fuel Solutions Coalition co-chair, who is going to give us a number of updates. Please help me, Crystal.
Thanks, Dan. And I liked Super County for Supervisor Desmond. We are a super county in San Diego. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'm going to be the B team giving an update for both Supervisor Foley and Supervisor Desmond. So I'm going to start with Supervisor Foley's update for the Spent Fuel Solutions Coalition. And she wanted to say thank you for everyone for being here. She apologizes for not being able to attend, and to give an update that there have been several significant new developments in spent fuel space since our last meeting. And she is excited to share details that, as everyone knows, Representative Mike Levin has been a leader when it comes to spent fuel issues and eventually moving the spent fuel from songs. He has played a key role in advocating for appropriations to continue funding DOE's consent-based siting program for the federal CIS and established the bipartisan Spent Fuel Solutions Caucus in the House of Representatives. We are delighted to see that on September 24th, I'll add, which was my birthday, so it was a great birthday present for me, Representative Levin, along with Representative August Pfluger of Texas, introduced the Nuclear Waste Administration Act of 2024. The bipartisan bill would amend the Nuclear Waste Policy Act in a manner that would allow for the timely development of off-site spent fuel storage and disposal solutions. Specifically, the proposed legislation would authorize 4 important improvements, which are the first one being consent-based siting process for 1 or more permanent deep geological repositories. Number 2 would ensure reliable funding. Number 3 would establish a single-purpose organization outside of DOE to manage the federal spent fuel program. And finally, number 4 would allow DOE's work to move forward quickly by providing more flexibility in the linkage between the CIS siting and construction, which can be completed within a 10 to 15-year time frame, and the development of a repository, which is more complex and will take many decades. And 10 to 15 years seems like a long time, but that is relatively quickly with the progress being made. These important aspects of the bill are consistent with Spent Fuel Solutions policy priorities and the executive board has unanimously voted to support it. If you are interested in learning more about the proposed legislation, I would encourage you to join us for a webinar with Representative Levin on November 21st. We look forward to learning more and thank Representative Levin for his strong leadership on this important issue. So those were Supervisor Foley's updates. I'm now going to move to Supervisor Desmond's updates. In addition to advocating for legislative reform, our coalition has been busy laying the groundwork for support at the national level. We have been looking to pass resolutions like Assembly Joint Resolution 18, which was adopted by the California legislature over the summer. Spent Fuel Solutions has also remained active in DOE's consent-based siting process, attending webinars with the consortia and responding to the department's request for information. One RFI was related to the development of CIS and will ultimately lead to an RFP. A lot of acronyms. The second is about a planned package performance demonstration to show the safety of spent fuel canisters under extreme conditions, which when we were seeing the shake table and the canister on the shake table, they even mentioned that we could create anything we wanted to see, any crazy off the wall idea to look at the safety of the canisters. So that'll be exciting to see what people come up with. And then also we plan to continue monitoring DOE's efforts, amplifying their message and taking advantage of future opportunities for participation. So on behalf of both of the co-chairs for the Spent Fuel Solutions, we really are excited about the progress that's being made, and we appreciate the assistance and the participation of everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And I think that was a great birthday present, if you ask me. And as far as all of the rest are concerned, you're certainly an A-team player. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Manuel, with reference to the upcoming webinar, can we post that link so folks can find out more about it and sign up for it?
Yes, will do.
Okay. And are there any other items that you have that you might want to add to what Crystal said?
Just the time of day for that meeting, which, you know, some of the details with the election, of course, and other intervening matters. The time of that webinar with Representative Levin is going to be 9:30 a.m. on the 21st.
Okay.
But we'll get that posted. We'll get that posted to the website for folks to be able to see and participate in that webinar, learn more about the Nuclear Waste Administration Act.
Great. My understanding that webinar is going to be co-hosted by the CEP and the Spent Fuel Solutions.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you both. Let's go ahead and move on. And let's see, I think we're here. Fred, I think you've got something to update us on in terms of the big picture again.
Yes, move to the next slide. I'd like to start with the principles that guide our work. Safety is number one. It has been, continues to be our top priority, both radiological and industrial safety. It means being prepared for changing conditions whenever they arrive, and keep our workers safe and be consistent with the dismantlement process. Stewardship applies to everything that we do here at SONGS. We're the stewards of the safe storage of our spent fuel until the Department of Energy picks it up, and we'll continue to bring updates to this group on our efforts to move the fuel offsite. Stewardship will also have SCE and SDS experts that are dedicated to this dismantlement, waste packaging and transportation, and protecting the environment. Engagement, we are committed to openness and public meetings like this one, as well as other engagement, public speaking engagements, public tours, our website. We hope for those who participated to our on-site public walking tours enjoyed seeing the progress that we've made with decommissioning, and will share the experience with friends and neighbors. Our last tour was on Saturday, November 2nd, and our next one is scheduled for Saturday, December 7th. We move to the next slide. We have three major work streams going on at Songs. On the dismantling of the structures, we are now more than 65% done, and we're on track for completion in late 2028. Two, we're safely managing the used fuel as long as it remains stranded on site. And three, we are and continue to advocate for off-site storage and find disposal solutions to allow us to clear the site of spent fuel. Back to you, Dan.
Okay, thank you, Fred. I think this next one is, of course, one that has been very important to me and a number of us throughout, and certainly look forward to some questions from our fellow CEP members. I think Jose Perez is up next.
Yeah, that's Jose. Yeah.
I'm ready. Let's go to the next slide. So I'll be
There you go.
walking us through the three funds that
We'll have
affect
two
all
different
the
kids
work.
in her backstroke. She's got the backstroke
that?
like Grayson. Grayson, how did the book talk the other day, dude?
So I'll walk us through the funds that we use here at San Onofre during the decommissioning process. Let's go to the next slide, Julia. So here you can see the three funds that affect what we do here. The decommissioning trust, the nuclear waste fund, and last but not least, the judgment fund. So the primary one that we utilize here at Songs is the decommissioning trust. And I've prepared this presentation from the viewpoint of Southern California Edison. Each of the other co-participants in the decommissioning have their own decommissioning trust fund. And they utilize those funds to pay for the expenses that are incurred here at San Onofre. So sticking with that left column, the purpose is, like I said, to pay for the decommissioning costs of all three units, 1, 2, and 3. And who takes a look at that, who has oversight? Well, it's the California Public Utilities Commission, CPUC for short, and as well as the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC. We provide periodic reports to both of those agencies so that they know where we stand with respect to the trust funds and make sure that there's adequate funds remaining to carry out the full decommissioning. Another fund, the Nuclear Waste Fund, is one that I'll go into more detail in a couple of slides, but it was basically created to provide a permanent repository for the spent fuel. And the source of the funding came from our utility customers. During operations, we would pay a certain amount per each kilowatt hour that we generated during operations, and that's the money that went into that trust fund. And the purpose was for the storage and disposal of the spent fuel. Who oversees that one? It's the U.S. Department of Energy, DOE. The one on the right, Judgment Fund, who pays into that? Well, it's all taxpayers. And that fund is not just for use in the nuclear world, but for any place that there are damages that are to be paid to impacted individuals. In our case, it's for the reactors for the spent fuel that is still remaining in our site to pay to reimburse us for the cost that we've incurred. And the overseer for that is the U.S. Department of Justice. So let's go into more detail on that first one, the decommissioning trust. So as I said, they hold the funds to cover for the decommissioning costs that we're incurring here at San Onofre. We've been using that trust to pay for costs since we permanently shut down. So costs from middle of 2014 to now have been paid from that trust. That's again from the viewpoint of SCE. San Diego Gas Electric, cities of Anaheim, Riverside also have their own trust funds, and we bill them their decommissioning share to pay for the costs that we are incurring. These trusts were developed by this act that you see there, the Act of 1985, and that act provided some guidance to the CPUC for how to set these trusts up. And the PUC decided to set up external trust funds to accumulate the money that was going to be necessary for decommissioning of our power plants. So while the power plants operated, we would collect the monies as estimated in the decommissioning cost estimates to make sure that we had enough money when the plants were permanently shut down. Those trusts were initially developed, initiated, as you can see there, in 1988, and they did show up on the customer's bills as a nuclear decommissioning charge. The contributions have ended. For Songs 1, they ended in 1999, and for Songs 2 and 3, the commission agreed that we did not need any more contributions from customers in 2016. So the last charge appeared a long time ago, almost over 8 years ago. Go to the next slide. So what do these trusts cover? What kind of expenses do we incur? So right now, the primary use of this trust is to pay our decommissioning general contractor for the demolition activities that are being carried out. But in addition, as Fred pointed out, we have the spent fuel on site that we have to maintain and take care of. So it pays for that in terms of the SCE labor that is used to provide a secure facility, as well as the SCE labor that's required to carry out routine maintenance and operations of that facility, as well as contractors that we need occasionally. It also provides our oversight for the activities that the DGC, the Decommissioning General Contractor, is carrying out. So all of the Edison labor on site and our contractor support are paid for through the trusts. But we also have some non-labor costs. What are those? Well, NRC fees. We have to pay for electricity, gas, water. We are not on land owned by us. We lease the land that we're on from the Department of Navy, so we have lease payments to make. And offshore, we have the offshore conduits, and so we pay lease costs to the State Lands Commission. Once the current phase of decommissioning is complete, as Fred pointed out earlier, around the end of 2028, then the trust will continue to pay for the spent fuel management. Since all of the structures will be gone, that'll be the only activity that will be done on site until the Department of Energy removes the fuel. Now, once the DOE does take the fuel, then the trusts will have the money to tear down the remaining structures, the ISFC itself, and whatever substructures the environmental impact report and the Navy deemed to be appropriate to remove. But the money for full removal of everything is in that trust. And that'll be somewhere in the 2050 timeframe. So a long time from now. Let's go on to the next slide. So the Nuclear Waste Fund, not used on a daily basis. In fact, not used at all now. We did pay into that while we were operating at a fee of 0.1 cents per kilowatt hour, and we paid every year that we were operating. And the purpose of that, as I mentioned earlier, was to provide a permanent geological repository, as well as to remove the fuel from the Song site and to transport it to wherever that repository was going to be built. So because nothing has been done and the Department of Energy has not yet taken the fuel nor built the repository, they ceased collections in May 2014. Obviously, by that point in time, we hadn't been generating, so we hadn't been paying into that trust. Now, as a result of the DOE's failure to take the fuel, then we've been filing claims and we've had litigation with the Department of Energy to recover the costs that we've been incurring for the on-site storage of that fuel. We've had several campaigns, several rounds of litigation, and that money is been returned to customers and or to the trust funds. You can see the number that the California utilities have paid into that nuclear waste fund, and that's the number for all three utilities for both Diablo Canyon, Humboldt Bay, and for San Onofre. Let's go on to the next slide. Judgment Fund. As you recall, this one is the one on the right side of that first graph that I had, first chart, and this one is paid into by all taxpayers. And this is where the money that the litigation proceeds that come to us are paid from the federal government. And so this is the money that we get through the litigation because the DOE has not yet fulfilled its obligation to take the fuel. And so, like I said earlier, all of the taxpayers pay into this fund through their taxes, and whether or not they received the power from San Onofre or from any nuclear reactor. So everybody pays into this one. And I believe that's it. So back to you, Dan.
Thank you, Jose. First of all, I want to look to my fellow CEP members and see if there are any questions. And yes, I thank you, Gary Brown. You're muted, Gary. Gary, you're still muted.
Okay, there. Thank you. I have a question. I always thought we paid the California state lands for the offshore conduits. We pay them a lease payment for using their land. Um, the ultimate plan for decommissioning is to continue to keep the conduits out there. We'll just make them non-operable. So my question is, do we always pay state lands for occupying their land? Or at some point, does that stop?
So our decommissioning cost estimate includes lease payments through the end of the period that I mentioned earlier, through 2050, the end of decommissioning once all of the fuel is gone. We assume that we continue to pay that. However, I believe there is an option to terminate the leases, and that is an option that we are starting to explore to see if something can be done. But you're right, the plan is to leave them in place. But however, until that liability of us having the lease is extinguished, we need to continue to have it in the decommissioning cost estimate, and we need to make the payments to the State Lands Commission, as well as to the Department of Navy. We also have a lease with the Navy.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Jose. Gary, as you may recall, at one of our earlier meetings, I asked the question, how much money was going to be saved by abandoning the conduits in place. And the savings was reported to be $100 million. So there is some savings that hopefully can be returned to the taxpayer or maybe used for an environmental program at some point in time. John Taylor.
Yeah, I was just wondering, where are we on the expenditures? Are you going to go over that as far as how much have we spent and how much do we have left, that type of thing? And are we on track?
I wasn't planning to provide that information, but I can. We've spent about 2.5 billion in 2014 dollars, which is the metric that we use to report our costs. And the decommissioning cost estimate is about 4.7 billion. So we're a little bit over 50% expended. Keep in mind that a lot of the money, there's a lot of years of just looking at the fuel through from, let's say, 2030 to 2050 timeframe, and that cost adds up. So right now we're identifying that we have sufficient funds, i.e. fully funded, to carry out all of the decommissioning activities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. Jose, can we go back, or Julia, can we go back to slide number 15, please? Thank you. So as we look at this, as a customer for Southern California Edison, and when we would get our bill, a small amount would go into column number 1 and column number 2 to provide funds for those trusts. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
You would see the bill that you would get would have a charge for nuclear decommissioning, and that would go into the trust column, and we would send a check to the federal government for the nuclear waste fund. That did not show up as a specific charge on our customer's bill. That was part of our operation maintenance costs.
Okay, so, but both of those were paid by the customer themselves. And the first trust, the Nuclear Decommissioning Trust, that's, of course, to pay for the decommissioning of songs. And as you had just reported, it's projected that there's enough in there to complete the job.
That's correct.
And if there's any money left over, does that go? What happens to that?
So it's a little bit premature to speculate as to how much is going to be left over, but if there are funds left over in the 2050 timeframe, then those funds will be returned to customers at that time.
Okay, that's great to hear. Then let's take a look at the second column, Nuclear Waste Fund. So I think you reported that California has participated to the tune of $977 million. And Songs, to my understanding of that, pitched in $431 million. So what's the total amount right now in the Nuclear Waste Fund?
That number I don't have, but I can certainly get it
Okay.
at a later time. I
It's
don't have the total.
40, yeah, it's that number at present is about $46 billion, including interest income. So that's for the those are national numbers, right? That's not just, of course, California or yeah. So total in is about 46 billion.
40, right, $46 billion. Okay, so, and then the new legislation that Congressman Levin is proposing might tap into some of this. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, as I recall, the bill provides so that trust fund, the nuclear waste fund, grows at about at over 1 billion. I think it's 1.6, but it continues to grow based on interest income. And so one of the facets of that particular bill as it was drafted is that the first priority would be for the program that currently within the Department of Energy would be to have access to the interest income, so that whatever $1.6 billion per year to fund the program. But it's a draft bill. We'll see what happens with that bill. One of the very important things, as Crystal mentioned when she was talking about legislation, is that we have reliable funding. So the exact mechanism for how that works, whether it's access to just the interest income or unfettered access to the full 46 billion, I think is to be determined.
Okay,
Does that
but
answer your question, Dan?
yes, absolutely. The point is there's a lot of money there that could be used to start moving this when we have a site or an interim site, and hopefully after that, a long-term site, permanent site. Okay, let's talk about the judgment fund. So Fred, if I could ask you a couple of questions right now. My understanding is that, as Jose had just mentioned, for some of these costs for storage, in fact, that was one of the questions that was asked of me when I went back and testified before the congressional subcommittee, is how much it costs. And I reported that for SCE, it's $20 million per year to pay for the storage of the spent fuel there. And then my understanding is that SCE then sues the federal government and are replenished from the judgment fund. Is that correct?
That is correct. Every utility that used spent nuclear fuel entered into contracts with the U.S. government. They're called standard contracts, whereby the utilities pay the 1 mil per kilowatt hour in exchange for the Department of Energy for taking liability of managing the spent nuclear fuel. The Department of Energy having not performed, utilities have been suing the United States for the non-performance of the Department of Energy, and have been recovering the cost of managing spent fuel that should have been removed, and the recovery from the U.S. government is paid through the judgment fund.
Victor, I'll be with you in just a second. So Fred, what's the incentive? I know SCE really wants to move the spent fuel, but what's the incentive for the utilities across the country to get rid of the spent fuel if they're being reimbursed by the federal government for storing it?
Well, I think for the industry, it's the status quo is not acceptable. The communities that are nearby nuclear plants never signed up for having the fuel stay on site for decades. So that's definitely something where utilities are accommodating it, seeking recovery, but also getting together to see how we can get a momentum for the Department of Energy to restart the program and come up with a solution as soon as possible.
That's great. You're exactly right. The communities around San Clemente did not sign up to be the long-term or permanent storage place for the spent fuel. Victor, your question, please.
My question is trying to reconcile the funds for reactor storage. As I understand, that $20 million you're talking about comes from the judgment fund, right?
Correct.
But we have, how is that different than the nuclear waste fund that is to pay for the storage of the spent nuclear fuel? Where does that money not go to those storage costs? Are they two separate
No.
funds? Is it for an interim storage, is it permanent storage only, or help me reconcile that, I guess.
Good question. Manuel?
Yeah, thank you, Victor. Yeah, I guess that's one of the reasons why the members of the panel asked that we try to describe the difference between these various funds. So nuclear waste fund, the one in the middle column, if we go back to slide, yes, the one showing there, slide 15, that is for the offsite disposition of spent nuclear fuel. That's the one that has the $46 billion in it at present, right, including interest income. The judgment fund is different. So the judgment fund so far, Fred talked about the litigation with the federal government. Those damages, those financial damages, have totaled about $10.6 billion to date, and on a rolling basis, it's about two million with an M, $2 million per day that all taxpayers pay. So the 10.6, that's the judgment. That's what's been paid so far out of the judgment fund. The nuclear waste fund, that's the one that sits at $46 billion right now.
Yeah, but we don't, that doesn't pay then for the storage right now.
No. No, well, no, it does not.
Okay, and that money is just earning interest until such time that it gets moved to a interim or
Yes.
permanent storage?
That's right. There's not much. The only, to my understanding, the very little is being done with that nuclear waste fund at present. There are some very minor costs to really, using my simple terminology, keep Yucca Mountain sort of on in mothball status. But there's little work being done or little being done with those funds to work on a permanent geologic repository for the permanent disposal of spent nuclear fuel. This is where, going back again to the bill that Crystal was talking about earlier, we really need the federal law to be changed. Right now, the Department of Energy, the accountable federal agency, is hamstrung. The only repository that they're currently authorized to pursue is Yucca Mountain, and that's at a standstill. So there is an effort underway to provide the one of the elements of that bill is for the Department of Energy or its successor agency to be authorized to use consent-based siting to start a process for identifying what are more willing communities that would host the country's permanent deep geologic repository, in addition to the work that's being done right now for consolidated interim storage facility. If that answers your questions, Victor.
My second question is, who manages that money? Does the federal government, does the nuclear waste fund itself?
Yeah, the federal government, and those appropriations have largely stalled. There's a bit of appropriations these days for the spent fuel program. What I understand from, you recall that I think it was first quarter of this year, we heard from Paul Murray at the Department of Energy. There's about 100 million being spent right now on the disposition of spent nuclear fuel. So that program that Paul manages, their current budget is about 100 million. And you have to keep in mind that about a quarter of that, 26 million, is being used for this consortia effort that we've heard from in the past. So that's the current budget is 100. You know that Tom Isaacs is an advisor to the Spent Fuel Solutions Coalition as well as to SCE. He mentioned that back in the day, the program was running at about $1 billion per year, not 100 million. So we have a ways to go to at least catch up to where we were before in terms of expenditures.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, thank you both. So Manuel, that's $10.6 billion so far that has been paid out of the judgment fund, and is growing at a rate of over $2 million a day. And that doesn't go through appropriations or anyone's particular budget. It's just funded as needed.
That's right. Congress does not control those figures, and the federal government has estimated, if you take a look at the NRC licenses for the current fleet of nuclear reactors, that 10.6 is forecasted to grow to about $30 billion by about mid-century.
That's staggering. Okay, thank you very much. John Taylor.
Thank you, Dan. I was going to ask about the requirement to litigate and what the legal cost must be for every utility in the United States to recover from the judgment fund the cost of the on-site storage. I mean, I would think legislation should be presented or something that the government just pays the bill instead of, I mean, does anybody have any idea of what the litigation costs are for Edison to get their money, recover the money?
I do
For
not. I don't know.
Sen and Onofre, it depends. If we do settle and have settlements after that, it makes it a lot easier. If we have to do a full litigation effort, it'll run a couple, $3 million.
Yeah, I mean, that just seems like such a waste of taxpayer dollars. They're going to pay the bill anyways. You know, I would think that we should probably see if we could press the coalition to maybe make that a little bit easier to just you present the bill and you get reimbursed. You know, it is the government's problem. So, thank you.
Thank you. So I think a final question, maybe somewhat rhetorical. So Jose, you mentioned that there are fees for the leases, both on land and underwater. And I know that the Southern California Edison has a lease with the Navy for the storage of their facility there. So as I understand it, then the Navy would charge Southern California Edison to store the spent fuel, and then Southern California Edison would then sue the federal government to reclaim those funds. Is that crazy or is what?
Well, the lease that we have is for more than just the location of the SOC, the spent fuel storage. It's for the entire site. That's what we pay the lease for. But you're right. The portion that the spent fuel sits on, we do put that into the litigation and we recover that from the federal government.
And maybe to add to that point, Dan, you're absolutely right. After 2028, when we're going to be in what we call East Fishie only, and we're going to be waiting for the DOE to come and pick up the fuel, we will be paying a rent to the Navy, and on the other hand, we will be suing the federal government for the non-performance of the DOE not picking up the fuel. So it's an interesting situation.
Yeah, it's crazy to be sure. And Fred, my understanding is the Navy just increased your lease rate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you tell us how much the new rent's going to be?
For the Navy lease properties, it's about $5 million a year for the easement.
Okay.
Almost another million for some other properties that we lease.
Okay, well, I think I'm looking to see if there's any other questions. I think this has been most enlightening, certainly disturbing in terms of the amount of money that's going, and hopefully in the future it can be directed into temporary and permanent storage. So I think we're moving on now. Manuel, I think you are up next as we move to slide number 21.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Excuse me. And yeah, so here, just as Fred mentioned earlier during this meeting, engagement is one of our decommissioning principles that guides our work. And of course, the community engagement panel that we formed here in 2014 is one element, one facet, and an important element of that in community engagement. And CEP members during an input meeting did recommend that we talk about a few of the ways in which SCE has been able to be responsive to community feedback over time. So go to slide 21. So here, taking action based on community interest. So we do, first and foremost, we've talked about it actually quite a lot tonight already. We do understand that many of the folks in the communities around Songs would like to see the site cleared of spent nuclear fuel so that the site can be, restored and returned to the Navy. So we did in 2021, we teamed with local governments, the counties of Orange and San Diego, in order to form the Spent Fuel Solutions Coalition that exists now and has grown to over 250 members. We would like to see, and the coalition is pressing for, a more durable spent fuel program, one that includes both near-term offsite interim storage of spent nuclear fuel, and then also, importantly, the permanent disposal of spent nuclear fuel in a deep geologic repository. So as part of that, and also working with David Victor and others, and a working group in spring of this year, we settled on a number of policy principles that all are very consistent with the final report from the President's Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future. And those are the policy principles that actually are pretty well aligned with the bill that Representative Levin and Representative Pfluger from Texas introduced in September on Crystal's birthday. So, and those policy principles are a single purpose entity, right? So you know that the Department of Energy has many different priorities. So every other country that has a productive spent fuel management program at the federal level has a single purpose entity that is running that program. We'd like to see that same happen here. And see that captured in legislation. Second is reliable funding. We talked about that here tonight. Having unfettered access, ideally, to the full nuclear waste fund. Authorization to use consent-based siting, an international best practice in order to pursue one or more deep geologic repositories here in the U.S. And then finally, this is kind of a in the weeds type issue, but there is linkage in the current legislation between interim storage and permanent disposal. So again, thank you to Crystal for teeing that up earlier in this meeting. But right now, you have to hold off, even if the DOE is successful with its consent-based siting process for consolidated interim storage facilities, and they have a willing community, you would have to wait to break ground until you've identified and done all the hydrology and geology for a deep geologic repository, and you have construction authorization for that repository. So you could be waiting decades. So that's yet another thing. That's one of the big four that we'd like to see and that we're pressing for the federal government to be able to address in legislation. So that's all under sort of, policy principles. Also, in terms of, creating awareness, there's a lot that we do in that space. Largely, it has resulted in things like resolutions. We do regular webinars, including the one that's coming up on November the 21st. And then finally, we do everything that we can to try to help the Department of Energy be successful with what it's currently doing. So, its current work is very important, and their success is our success. So we did have one of our most popular meetings in recent years was the one with the DOE and Paul Murray in first quarter of this year. So a lot going on in that space. Next slide. So here are a few things to cover on this slide. One is the first thing here, this ongoing funding. So we, as a utility and operator of songs, we had an agreement with a number of offsite emergency responder agencies during operations. When we permanently defueled the reactors. What other utilities in the U.S., at least at that point, had done is they cut all funding for offsite agencies. So in our case, we did continue to provide funding to some key offsite agencies. So you see them listed here, 3 local cities and the 2 counties. And that funding does reduce along with the radiological risk over time. But funding at some level does stay in place as long as spent fuel is on site at songs. So that was certainly the continuing role for local emergency responders was something that we heard loud and clear from the local community. So we have that in place. Another one is what we call the ISFC radiation monitoring system. So you see in the middle of the image there that box is one of our ISFC radiation monitors, and that provides data in real time to some offsite agencies. Key among them is the California Department of Health Services, their radiologic health branch, and they produce monthly reports that we put on our website. Very easy to read publicly, for the general public. And then at the bottom of the slide, see 48 hours. So we also provide advanced notifications of our liquid batch releases so that folks can know that they're coming. And we put those on the website so that folks can know. We let them know what the characterization of those releases is going to be. And then, as I think you mentioned earlier, Dan, we also have now the ability for people to sign up for an email if they want to get that directly. Next slide. So yeah, and then finally, here's a screen grab. So this is the landing page on our website. So we circled a few things here that we thought would be relevant to folks, but there's quite a bit that you can do. Folks can of course go here and find out when the next liquid batch release is going to occur. You can sign up for a tour. So we have members of our staff who volunteer and show up on Saturdays, key Saturdays during the month, to provide a public tour for anybody who wants to sign up. You do have to, provide NRC regulatory required information. But yes, we do that. And then of course, latest news, blog reports, a lot of good information available on that dedicated website. So that's what I wanted to share. So with that, let me pause and see if there's questions from the panel.
While we're looking for questions, I just want to compliment and say thank you, because a number of things that you mentioned have been at the request of members of the community. In fact, the area for monitoring and the advance notice for the discharges. So those really are SCE's response to comments and requests from the general public. So thank you for that. Looks like Martha.
Yes, Manuel, going back to the proposed legislation and the changes to the Nuclear Waste
Policy Act.
When you say linkage, to revise the linkage between interim and permanent, the fact that you can't do interim until you have permanent. Okay, when you say revise linkage, you really mean get rid of that linkage? That ideally.
That would be one way. I'm not sure that we'll get that folks will support that. There could be other language. For instance, one you could have some very general language in the legislation that says that you have to have a strong and stable program to develop a repository before you can break ground on a consolidated interim storage facility. So that's less than having construction authorization. So you could look at some other type of milestone along the way. Maybe it's the onset of consent-based siting for one or more deep geologic repositories. There are a few different ways that you go about it, but yeah, we might think about trying to remove the linkage altogether. But that may be a reach for us.
So you're more kind of, yes, we will still work on permanent, but at least allow us to do interim while we work on the other, as opposed to complete one and then the other.
Yeah. Yes,
yeah.
I think so, Martha. And the other thing I would say, sort of related to your question, is for a consolidated interim storage program to be successful and for communities to sign up to host spent fuel facilities on what's supposed to be an interim basis, you really need to have a robust program for a permanent repository. Otherwise, the host communities for CIS, would logically fear that interim would become permanent by default.
I get it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Victor.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a better understanding of who's the driving force behind tying them together. Is it, is it a particular member of Congress? Is it a particular senator? Is it the industry? Is it, at some point in time, politics change a lot. And I just want to know if the understanding is that force that wants them tied is still there, or whether that force is gone, or do we know?
I don't know. It's an interesting question there, Victor. Maybe we can move past that, but we'll have to think about that. Yeah, I of course only been working on this issue for the past several years and was not around back in the day when the Nuclear Waste Policy Act was enacted in 1982. 1987, I had just graduated from college, so yeah, not working on this issue at that time. But it's an interesting question. I appreciate the question. Sounds like advice disguised as a question.
Sometimes, my experience is that it was usually, some strong senator in some particular state that had an interest in not making sure that the permanent storage was coming to theirs, or they had an interest in the temporary, but wanted to make sure that if it was there, it was going to move on. So, you know, it may, that force may not be around anymore, so that you could do an interim somehow. That's it.
Thanks for the
sure. Looks like
questions.
we-
Thank
I'm
you, Dan.
sorry. Yes, and John Taylor has a question as well. Thank you, John. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you. Just a quick question regarding the transportation of the fuel, or even currently, is the only way to transport on the rails to go along the corridor that goes through San Clemente, or is there could you take it south to San Diego and then go east from there? I don't really know the rail line. Are there other routes available, or is it the only one is north through San Clemente area?
I think the answer is yes. I think, Ron, are you
Oh,
in a
it's,
position?
it can go south.
Oh, it can't go south. Okay, so there's other options. Okay.
There
Thank
are
you.
other options, and beyond rail options, I would say that, you know, as a country, you know, we may need to use, you know, heavy haul transport trucks, you know, over the road, and barge. You know, for instance, in Northern California, you have the Humboldt Bay nuclear power plant, a fully decommissioned plant, that does not have rail access and no intent to build rail through the forest. So there, logically, you would do barge in order to get it to a place where you could get it to rail and do the transfer to rail there. Internationally, folks have even on a very limited basis used air. At a CEP meeting many years ago, a guy named Jack Edlow of Edlow International, a spent fuel transportation specialist, talked about the fact that, you know, his company has done all four. So, you know, rail, heavy haul truck, barge, and air.
I see. Thank you.
Some optionality there. Thank you, Dan.
Martha, I see your hand up. Did you have another question?
No, I'm trying to figure out how to lower my hand.
Okay, well, you may have a question for the next section.
there we go.
you
I
go.
got it.
Yeah.
I got it. Okay.
Great. So, Emmanuel, I think that I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much. I think that was most informative, and we'll move on to the next session, which I think
Petey?
is.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you hear me? I think I'm good. I'm
Yes.
unmuted.
Yep.
Okay. So, welcome. This is my first opportunity to present to the CEP meeting. So I am Jim Petey. I am the site operations manager, pretty much the counterpart to Ron Pontus, while Ron focuses on radiological activities, waste environment. My main focus is on field work activities, looking at industrial safety and compliance to processes. So let's go next slide. So what this slide shows you is the overview of the site as a whole, is a map. What you see here is the areas right now represented in blue is where we're actively doing demolition work of our auxiliary buildings, right? The areas in green are the next set of buildings that are eventually ready to be demolished, and those will occur down the road a little bit. And then inside of the containments, we're doing demo work there also, we'd call large component work. But as a whole, all these areas that are dark shaded are areas where the structures, buildings have been removed from the site. So you can see quite a bit of the property has been demolished, structures removed. And right now we're into the larger components of the demolition work. Okay, next slide. What this is this just is an overview of the schedule in our 6 project focus areas. It really, we've got large component work going on, system removal, we've got our auxiliary buildings, we've got RV segmentation, we've got the containment domes to demo. We'll need to do the backfill, remove all the utilities, and finish up our final status survey. And that's basically where we go off and validate through on-site surveys that the site has been removed to decontamination down to the levels required by the NRC regulations. And the good news here is the project's been tracking to the end of 2028 for quite a while now. So we've got pretty good consistent schedule performance there. So we have confidence that we'll finish on time. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I talked about the 3 focus areas. So these are the work that's going on right now. So large components, these are really the large items inside of the containment buildings themselves. Auxiliary buildings was really the blue and green areas on the map. And then reactor vessel segmentation, and this is where we're going into each of the containments and we're downsizing the actual reactor vessel. So it's different than when we did Unit 1. Unit 1, the entire reactor vessel went out on one rail car shipment. In our case, we've got a larger vessel. We're actually going to segment that vessel into smaller manageable pieces, and those will go out into the rail cars themselves. What's unique about this is there is a lot of specialty equipment, filtration, lift equipment, flame cutting equipment. And then we're going to do this work in series. So we're going to do 1 unit first. And then once we're done with that equipment, we'll demob it, move it to the opposite unit, and then we'll finish the work in the other unit. So unit 3 first, unit 2 second. Along this, I want to point out that there's a lot of higher risk work that's going on. You'll see some of that in the pictures. So we're really pleased to see that our industrial safety performance has continued to I'll say progress and move towards a positive performance. We haven't had an OSHA recordable injury in the last 12 plus months, right? And that would be anything as simple as needing stitches for cuts in a finger, right? So OSHA recordable wise, we're doing very well there. And our first aid injury rate is also very low. We're at just over 3.5 injuries per every 200,000 man hours of work over the last 12 months. So we focus on this every day. I know we focus on the decommissioning contractor side. The workers are more experienced now. So I think we're doing well in decommissioning work itself. All right, and then next slide. So I'll take you through some photographs of things that have gone on. So we've talked previously about the Unit 2 and 3 pressurizer shipments. These were the 2 pressurizers after they were repackaged. They were shipped to Clive, Utah. Those arrived there safely back on October 10th. Next slide. So reactor coolant pumps, this is part of the large component work. In each containment, there are 4 reactor coolant pumps and motors. Each one of these pumps and motors weighs about 60 tons, right? So about 120,000 pounds per pump. So basically there's 8 of these to remove, 8 motors to remove. What you see here is the last of the RCP motors coming out of containment. So this is the number 8 of 8, so that'll ship off probably next week. On the pump side, we have 4 reactor coolant pumps removed. Those are also shipped off site as of, I believe, 2 weeks ago. All right, next slide. So a lot of the work that's been going on for last year, we've been talking about steam generators and segmenting the steam generators. So just an overview of what these are. They're basically large heat exchangers, but they're about 60 feet tall from top to bottom, or a little over 60 feet, anywhere from 12 feet to 15, 18 feet in diameter. The very top is what we call the secondary side. That's essentially where you have your steam air dryer assemblies, moisture separators. And then the middle to lower half is where all the tube is. So that's your RCS side. In Unit 2, we've cut these down, segmented them, and all of the Unit 2 steam generator work is essentially complete. Right now, we're wrapping up the last lower section there on steam generator 9. And then on Unit 3, making good progress there. On one steam generator 9, we've actually cut the air dryers out. So that's the top 3rd section there. And then on 88 on Unit 3, we just finished removing what they call the U-bend on the steam generator tubes. I have some extra pictures here to show you. So let's go to the next slide. So I talked a little bit about Unit 3. So what you see there on the left is the air dryer assembly on steam generator 9. That work is actually being done with plasma torches on the stainless steel, and then Oxylance Petrogen style torches on the steel itself for the outer shell. The picture there on the right is what the top of a steam generator tube bundle looks like. Half of it is removed in this picture. The other half has been removed since we took this picture. And how they cut this is they used a diamond wire saw. So they saved themselves about 2 weeks of cutting time, right? And the physical dose of having someone stand up there and do all the work, right? So always looking to do things a little bit better. So they'll do the same thing once they get down to, on steam generator 89 when they get to this section. So this work is progressing well now. And then reactor cavity seal ring, this is part of the RV segmentation work. So what you see here, we'll start with the photo on the right-hand side. That's the reactor vessel cavity in Unit 3. Basically, it's all drained down, all cleaned up. And they've installed a bunch of new equipment. So we've installed a new filter ventilation system. All right, because of the amount of cutting that's going to go on here, you're going to need a ventilation system to remove all the smoke. What you can see there in the middle on the right is the reactor vessel itself. And it looks like there's a little hole around there's a gap around the vessel. That gap is what's called the cavity seal ring area. And those pictures on the right, or excuse me, the left-hand side in the center are where they cut that cavity seal ring out. So the workers are down there with Plasmarks. They cut that seal ring out, and then they rig each of the 6 pieces out, about 5,000 pounds a piece. And what that does is having that seal ring out of there now allows you access to the reactor vessel piping itself. So we call them hot legs and cold legs. So what they'll be doing next week is they'll be setting up that diamond saw operation, and then they'll start cutting through the actual piping to the reactor vessel to free it up. So this work is actually progressing well, slightly ahead of schedule, and no issues. The next slide. Okay, so I think we have a video to play. There's a short video. It's mostly Ron and myself talking about how much work we've done so far in decommissioning, where we're at. You can also find a link to the video on the CEP meeting website, right? So you can always go back and watch this video later. So you can go ahead and play
It's
that.
incredible what's
There we go.
happened here over the past 5 years. We started the major decommissioning work, or dismantlement work as we call it, in 2020. And since then, you know, at that point, we had 2 large, fully intact nuclear power plants standing here with fuel still inside some of the spent fuel pools. And so since that time, we've started the major decommissioning work, and we've made a tremendous amount of progress.
That progress is visible throughout the site, where structure after structure has disappeared from the landscape, reduced to rubble, and transported out of state, mostly by rail, to Clive, Utah, and other locations.
Essentially, we get all the large components out of the containments, remove as much of the structural, internal, I'll say cement structures and that, bring those down. And then when you actually get to how do you bring down this containment structure, right? It's 3 feet thick of concrete, it's rebar, it's we've got a steel liner plate through the whole thing. Right now, the plan is to remove it from a bottom-up method, right? Essentially demolish, excavate about 10 feet high all the way around the perimeter containment, with the idea being that the weight of the structure at some point will allow the whole containment dome, right, to basically drop, right, as a large unit. It'll stay intact. You clean up that rubble, and then you approach it again.
You're on Unit 2,
feed water control valve, unit.
When the plant was operating, the control room was the nerve center of the plant. It was where everything was controlled from. It's where our most qualified operators resided to control and oversee the operation of the plants. And moving forward to that day when we were able to bust into the control room and happen to see this one lone chair, it was, I think it was a pretty impactful moment to see that, because that chair is where a shift supervisor would have sat, you know, as he oversaw the operation of the plant. So it kind of represents an end to the history of the plant in a way, you know, and I think it has a human facet to it, because this is where people worked.
Yeah, so yeah, I just want to add the video quality there wasn't as good, at least early on in the video. But I know if you click it through the external link, it's all high quality video.
Thank you. Anything else, Jim?
Nope, I think we're ready for Ron unless there's questions.
Okay, I'll look real quickly, see if there are any questions. As we're looking for those, I just want to make a comment of an appreciation that your safety record is, I mean, that's truly amazing to be doing the type of work that's taking place at San Onofre, and to have virtually no incidents over the past year is truly a testament to the quality of the work and the safety culture that's going on there. So just want to congratulate everybody on that, especially as someone who had 120 employees and had a number of workers' comp claims. So that was always, unfortunately, always an issue with folks with them. So to be able to take care of the crew working there, that's wonderful. So thank you very much, Jim. And I think I don't see any other questions. So Ron, great seeing you in the video, and now we get to hear you in person.
All right, good evening, everyone. Let's go on to the next slide. So I want to talk about two things here with you this evening. One is about the tritium matter that I discussed at our last CEP meeting verbally. The other one is to respond to some questions that were raised about some spikes that we're seeing on radiation monitors that are off the site. So let's start with the tritium. You'll recall last meeting, I briefed everyone about a notification we had just made that very same day of the meeting that we had detected tritium here on the site. And the slides I've got here are going to show you a little bit more about that so you understand what we're dealing with. So just to review, we did detect tritium in our groundwater wells on the western side of the Unit 2, close to where the seawall is. Groundwater at the Song site and the region around Songs is not drinking water. That's based on the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board San Diego Basin Plan. So none of the water in this region west of the 5 freeway is drinking water. The levels of tritium that we did detect are below the drinking water standard, by the way. So even if it was drinking water, it would be below that standard, which is 20,000 picocuries per liter. And we haven't detected any other radioactivity in the water other than the tritium, okay? And again, although it's not required by regulations, on September 5th, we did initiate what's called a voluntary communication to notify state and local agencies and key stakeholders to let them know what we had here. And we also notified the community engagement panel and the public at the meeting. So just to raise awareness about this. And then you'll notice the bottom of this slide is a link. If you want to know more about groundwater monitoring at Songs, please go there. There's a little video and there's a lot more written information if you want to look into that. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this will give you a little more information about what I was talking about. If you look on the bottom of this slide, on the left is an overview of the Song site. And right in the middle on the bottom, you'll notice there's an arrow. It says H3 detected. H3 is tritium. Okay, so there's two wells there, PA1, PA2, and MW8. Okay, the wells that are identified as PA1, PA2, PA3, PA4, and also identified as OCA or NIA, those wells are all part of our radiological monitoring program for groundwater. Okay, so those wells get sampled on different frequencies, most of them on a quarterly basis, others on a semi-annual or annual basis, but they're all sampled, and we sample them periodically for tritium and other radioactivity. So back in April of this year, we did detect the tritium. Now we didn't know that we didn't see the results of that sample until later in June. Was our first indication that we became knowledgeable of the tritium that was in the groundwater. So it was initially detected in this PA2 well. After a couple of samples on PA2 over a period of time, we decided that we would also sample a well that's next to it. This is an MW well. Now all these MW wells that you see on the map were installed for a different purpose. They're not for radiological monitoring. They're for non-radiological hazards. They were installed as part of a program to assess non-rad, metals, chemicals, so on, acids, bases, and so on that might be in the groundwater. So that's what they're for. But we went and sampled this well that was nearby. It happens to sample from a lower elevation, gee, we got a higher tritium result on sampling that well. And you can see on the right on the bottom what that concentration looks like over time. So on MW8, the peak that we've analyzed there in a sample was around 19,000 picocuries per liter. But if you look at that orange line, you can see that it's trending downwards. And this chart here, it's around 11,000. We just sampled that well day before yesterday and got results on it, and it is around 8,000, so it's tending to trend down. Meanwhile, though, PA2 seems to be hanging in there at around 3,000 or so picocuries per liter. Now, what have we done? We hired a hydrogeologist to help us assess the extent of the tritium contamination and to help us know what other actions we should take. We have sampled some other wells. If you look to the back to that first chart on the left, if you look just to the left of where it says H3 detected, there's a series of 4 wells, PA1, MW5, 6, and 7, kind of going in a vertical fashion up to the left. We've sampled all those wells, and we didn't see any tritium at all detected there. So the other thing that this hydrogeologist has advised us, and he prepared a plan to this effect, was to install additional wells that flank PA1 and MW8. So 6 additional wells, 2 to the south, 2 to the north, 1 to the east, and 1 deeper in that area will be installed. We expect to get those wells installed first part of December and get them developed and get them sampled by mid-December is our aim. So we should have some data off of that. Why is that important? Because installing those wells and sampling them will help us define the extent of the plume that's below this area. And it may help us understand where the source of the tritium was coming from.
Ron, for just clarification, I think you mentioned PA1 and MW8. It is PA2 and MW8 that we are looking at new wells around this area, correct?
Yeah, thanks for catching that, Fred. Sorry, I was speaking a little too fast there. Yeah, PA2 and MW8. Okay, so that's all in progress. Let's go to the next slide. So another thing I wanted to make sure that you have an opportunity to understand is what the hydrogeology is below the site. So where does the groundwater come from? Actually, it comes from the hills that are to the east of the site or on the other side of the 5 freeway. So imagine the water there is draining below the freeway. It crosses our site and flows into the ocean, all below grade, flowing through the San Mateo Formation and finding its way back to the Pacific Ocean. These arrows represent the direction of flow. And the lines that are normal to those arrows and going left and right, they show the groundwater elevation below the site. Closer to the ocean is about 4.5 feet above sea level. Then the next line above it, you can see it's 5, and then 6.5 or so. The elevation of the water below the site rises some as you go more to the east. So that's the gradient of the groundwater below the site. So I want you to understand this, because it's important to realize that the contamination of this tritium is originating on site. We're not finding it in any wells up gradient. So it's definitely coming from our site. And putting those additional wells in that I just spoke about will help us understand better where it came from. Now, the estimated flow rate of the water below the site varies between about 9 feet to about 94 feet per year. So it's a pretty big variable about how the water flows across the site and how fast it flows. And again, 2 groundwater monitoring systems. You see a lot of wells here. The MW wells for non-rad. We could also place them in service though for taking radiological samples. And then the radiological monitoring wells are identified by PA, OCA, or NIA. So that's the situation with hydrology here on the site. Before I move on to the next subject about the radiation spikes on a rad monitor, any questions on the tritium?
Thank you, Ron. We'll look and see if anyone has a question.
Not hearing any. Okay, let's move on then.
Well, I'll ask a question.
Okay.
In terms of the tritium itself, my understanding that the half-life is like 12.5 years or something like that. So the tritium, okay, so it's something that could have been created more than a decade ago. Is that right?
Okay, so where does the tritium come from? First of all, tritium is present all around us. It's created in the upper atmosphere. It's the interaction of cosmic rays with gases in the upper atmosphere. So that's the big production source of tritium on the planet. You find it in rivers, streams, the ocean, soil. You find it everywhere, in the air, okay? So it's present at very low levels. Now, it's also a byproduct of reactor operations. So as we operate the reactors and the neutrons are interacting with other elements that are in the reactor coolant system, we start getting tritium production. So when we shut the plant down, we had an inventory of tritium that was remaining in the reactor coolant system mainly, okay? So that's tritiated water. So we've been handling a lot of that water since we shut the plant down. A lot of it has been discharged to the ocean. We still have more to go, as you know, as we've talked about many times about the discharges. So yeah, it is a byproduct of the operation here. We're not making any more tritium since we shut down though, Dan. There's no more production on site.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's go to the next slide then. Next slide. Okay, so at the last CEP meeting during the Q&A, I think there was a comment raised by a member of the community or the public. This person had seen spikes on a rad monitor that he has installed just off of our property over on State Park's property. Okay, so he was asking about, well, what were those spikes? Because he saw them on July 17th and 18th. And yeah, it was a good question. I mean, he asked the question during the meeting, and I didn't know how to answer that because I wasn't aware of this particular issue. I went back here and we talked to the folks here on site, and sure enough, everyone else knew about it but me. But we had on board the site on the 17th and 18th members from the transmission and distribution group at Southern California Edison. That's the group that's responsible for the operation and maintenance of the switch yard, or as we call it now, a substation. So inside the substation are these large circuit breakers. They're They service a voltage of 220,000 volts, and these are very special breakers, and they're filled with a gas. It's called shoot, it's right here. Sulfur hexafluoride gas, SF6. SF6 is used in these breakers because it has a very strong dielectric effect. It's non-conductive, and it dissipates the arc between the breaker when it opens. So periodically, transmission and distribution will come to their substations or switch yards, and they'll inspect these circuit breakers. You just don't open the breaker up and look inside. Don't want this gas to spill out. So the way they inspect it to know what's going on inside the breaker is they perform radiography. So while they were here, they performed radiography on a couple of circuit breakers to make sure that they were in good health and there was no problems with them. So during that radiography, we had rad monitors here on site. It was actually turned out to be a bit of a headache for SDS as some of their radiation monitors were going off. And even the radiation monitors on the ISPAC saw some spikes. So all of that was anticipated here on the site. It had been planned before. We were anticipating this to happen, so it wasn't a surprise to anyone here. Apparently, though, this radiation monitor that's off-site, not our monitor, it's operated by a company called Safecast. They identified it. They also identified the spikes and asked what they were. So we let Safecast know through you, Dan, about what was the cause of this particular spike. So that's what happened. It didn't have any impact on the health or safety of the public. The people that were performing the radiography are certified to do so, and it's what they do all the time. So I'll take any questions you might have on this matter if you have any.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Looking to see any questions while we're waiting. Quickly back to the tritium. When do we think we might get a report, or the SCE would get a report from the independent hydrologist that's doing the study?
Well, what we're really waiting for now is to see the sample results from these 6 wells after they're installed. So we should get samples around mid-December, say 16, 17 of December, if all is on track. And then a few days after that, we should have some preliminary results while we wait for formal results from the offsite laboratory. So when we meet again, I think in February, I think that's our next CEP meeting, I'll be able to provide a much more comprehensive and better report about what we found and what our next steps are.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ron. Looking, I don't see any other questions. Martha, Victor, nothing from you folks? Okay, I guess that'll take care of that. Thank you, Ron.
Welcome.
So in just a moment, we're going to take a break, 5-minute break. But once again, the directions for public comment. The CEP public comment form link is available to submit a question or to sign up to speak online. The names of the individual, actually the names of the individuals won't be online. So Manuel is going to be guiding me, and he'll be saying who will be next, who will be speaking, and who will be in the batter's box, so to speak. And the questions, comments and questions will be addressed in the order received. And Victor and Martha will facilitate that. So we're going to take a 5-minute break now, unless, Emmanuel, have I missed anything else here?
Just clarification, so that will be Lorraine. She's usually the one who populates on screen the order of commenters. So that information will be coming from Lorraine, not from me.
Okay, so Lorraine,
you're in very good hands.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, let's take a quick 5-minute break, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Dan, for your awareness. Oh,
I'm here.
I'll text you the names, and but right now we have Alice McNally and Rudy Salazar.
McNally.
I'll send them to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Many technical issues.
Happy fun starts.
Manuel, are we ready to run?
Just a moment. Lorraine's working her way back to her desk.
Okay. We need her.
Okay, so Lorraine is settling back in for us. Dan, and for everybody online here, Dan, you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that we had some questions from a member of the public. So that was from Alice McNally. Some of the content, as you stated, was covered by Ron. Other information regarding sea level rise was covered extensively at the first quarter 2024 CEP meeting. So we're directing Alice, anybody else who's interested in sea level rise, to that meeting that has all the best latest information regarding our understanding and study of sea level rise and other coastal processes. There are at least 4 questions that were part of what we heard from Alice McNally. So we can handle that in any way you like. We can answer those up front, or just make sure that after anybody who wants to ask questions, we know that we have Alice McNally and Rudy Salazar, queued up to ask questions during public comment. But we can answer those questions. Jose can answer those questions about CPUC and costs, et cetera, at the very beginning, or we can wait until folks ask their questions and then cover that content. But we are prepared to address that content.
What would you recommend?
I think I think we should go ahead and hear from the 2 folks, or anybody and everyone who's signed up for public comment. I think maybe Charles Langley has his hand up. So I think let's hear from folks, and then when we get to answering any questions, we'll make those the first questions that we answer.
Okay, that sounds good. I think we have Alice McNally first and Lee Salazar next. So let's go ahead and bring Alice on. And before we begin, I just want to thank everyone. If they would please remember that there are 3 minutes, and please try to keep your comments contained within that period. And of course, some of them are much longer that we have written, so we already have those documented. Okay, so let's go ahead, and Alice, are you there? While we're waiting for Alice, maybe we'll come back to her and see if Rudy is available. Rudy, are you available? Manuel, do you see their names at all on as far as the?
Yeah, Rudy is on. Maybe Rudy's on twice or something, but I do see there's Rudy.
Is that my microphone making that mess?
Well, you're fine now.
Okay, hi. Yeah, Rudy Salazar, Ransburg Project. Hello, everybody. Some of you know me, and some online probably don't. I just stopping in tonight, listening to the meeting, and wanted to give you a little bit of progress of what we've been working on here at the Randsburg project. Cal State Fullerton, for the second time since last semester and this semester, there's a team of students that is very active up in Randsburg recently. They've made 4 visits up there, boots on the ground, talking to the Randsburg 50 that I call them, the 50 residents up there in Randsburg about the initiative we got going. And just wanted to let you know that I'm really looking forward to this current report. Through last year's report was more of a business plan, kind of getting the startup business going, so to speak. This year's report, they're really focused on the social aspect of it, and concentrating on what it takes for these people to in Randsburg to start getting educated on possibly storing spent fuel on an interim basis here on my property, my 58 acres in Randsburg. So hopefully when that report comes out, I'd like to get the report to the CEP and see if they would consider maybe discussing it, taking it up as an agenda on that. Also, my personal outreach to the program has been going real well. There is a group called the Public Lands for the People, PLP, borrowed my property for the 2nd year in a row. It's about 100 fifth wheel campers come up and they do a bunch of gold mining and dry washing up there. And I had an opportunity this time to talk to the whole group over dinner. And so I did a little speech and that went over well. There were some Randsburg people there and I got to talk to them. Some of them are not very happy with me and some, are open-minded. But they've actually invited me to Randsburg to have a roundtable meeting. So that's separate from what's going on with Cal State Fullerton up there. So been making some pretty good progress at talking to the people up in Randsburg, not only going to the water meeting districts on a regular basis, but also personally sitting in living rooms. So also on the request for information for the package performance demonstration with the DOE, I put a request in that we do 3 separate train speeds going around the Tehachapi Loop, which is in Tehachapi, into Boron, which is at the Kramer Junction, just 20 miles south of my property, where all of the northern spent fuel canisters most likely will have to travel anyways. So going around the Tehachapi Loop, I don't know if many of you know about the Tehachapi Loop, but it is the only loop in the United States and for train. And going at 3 different speeds, I think it'd be a great test for testing the packages of spent fuel going around the loop and going right by, going along to Boron, just south of my property. And that's it. Just wanted to give a little update and making progress and just, I'm still making noise out there. I plan on going to Diablo's meeting coming up during this month. There's a meeting out there with the Nuclear Regulatory Agency, I think it is. Yeah, that's all. Rudy Salazar, Randsburg Project. Good work, you guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rudy Salazar. Let's see if we have Alice McNally. Are you out there?
Dan, we don't see her in the attendee list.
Okay, who do we have on deck then?
Dan, this is Lorraine, and there's no one else on deck to speak at this time. We're waiting to see if people fill in the CEP form, but I do see that Charles Langley has his hand raised.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and move to Charles then. Charles, we see your hand. Please unmute your microphone and you have 3 minutes. Thank you. Charles, we see your hand and your microphone is still muted. Maybe he left and didn't come back yet from the break.
That's 15 minutes ago.
Yeah,
I saw his image on screen, after the break, that is,
okay.
but he must have stepped away for a moment.
Um, Well, why don't we go ahead? We can circle back to him. But let's go ahead, if we can, then to Victor and Martha and go over some of the comments and questions that have been submitted and see if we can address those. So,
Yeah, I was really hoping to hear what Alice had to say in person because her questions are pretty detailed. So I didn't know whether she was going to repeat those or had some different questions for us. But
well, Martha, we do have excuse me, Jose standing by to address some of the questions we have from Alice in writing, if you'd like to go to that.
okay, do you want me to? I'll go ahead and read her questions and then defer to Jose for answers. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
Okay, question one from Alice McNally is 1/3 of the fully funded songs decommissioning fund of $4.4 billion plus has been paid into by customers, and we continue to be billed each month. Edison is a monopoly, so we have no other choice. The cost of decommissioning songs was originally estimated at $4.7 billion. And I think Jose's going to correct that perception, I think.
That's right. So what she says there is not totally correct. As I mentioned earlier, when I was going through the trust funds and all the different kinds of funds, I pointed out that the Public Utilities Commission approved our request to end customer contributions back in 2016. Now, there is some decommissioning or nuclear charge showing up on the customers' bills for San Diego Gas Electric and Edison, but that is for the cost that we incur to store some Songs 1 fuel that is at an offsite storage facility. And as we talked about as well, we do sue the DOE for that cost and we recover that cost. So the customers are made whole for that. Also want to point out that the 2020 Songs 2 and 3 decommissioning cost estimate that we submitted to the PUC in 2022 showed that the number was 4.7 billion, and that's the 100% number. And as I mentioned earlier, the dollars are in 2014 dollars, which is the way we show those dollars.
And Jose, when you say 100% dollars, what do you mean?
That is for all 4 co-participants, SCE, San Diego Gas Electric, Anaheim, and Riverside. So all of the shares, ownership shares or decommissioning shares put together.
Okay. Her second question is, nevertheless, in 2020, the CPUC awarded Songs $461 million in new money to cover the same steps estimated to cost $166 million in 2017. This is just short of 3 times what was predicted. Edison has repeatedly asked for more money, citing delays contributing to higher costs.
So go ahead.
I don't think that was new money, right? That was, anyway, you can explain it better than I can, so.
Okay, so as we've talked about before, in any given year, the decommissioning activities and therefore the cost can differ. And sometimes they differ significantly from what was forecasted in the decommissioning cost estimates for that particular year in the prior decommissioning cost estimates. The primary reason could be that we've had delays in the permitting process, or for example, we had a delay due to the canister that was having problems when we downloaded into the ISFSI. However, looking at the project as a whole, the anticipated costs have remained generally constant. The 2017 decommissioning cost estimate that we submitted had 4.5 billion, and the latest one is 4.7 billion. Now, with respect to the numbers that she cites there specifically for 2020 decommissioning cost, in December of 2019, we submitted a request to the CPUC to withdraw funds from the Songs trusts for our share of those expenditures. The 461 million that she cites there is the 100% share. As I pointed out, that's for San Diego Gas, Electric, SCE, Anaheim, Riverside. That was 461 million, again in 2014 dollars. That was not new money. It was simply a request to access the trust funds that already, and so that trust fund already had that amount of money. So we were just requesting to use what we thought we were going to spend in the upcoming year to withdraw from the trust funds. We did explain in the request to the PUC that the 166 million, which Alice cites there, was the amount that the decommissioning cost estimate for 2017 had for that calendar year. So the difference between the two, again, as I pointed out, is because the regulatory delays that we experienced in getting the final environmental impact report approved through the and the coastal development permit approved through the Coastal Commission. In addition, we had to suspend fuel transfer operations because of that 2018 canister downloading event, and so that pushed some activities that we had anticipated originally doing in that prior period over to 2020. The cash flows were basically deferred from prior years to 2020. Back to you, Martha.
Okay. Okay. Number 3, customers will also pay for the power they buy from other plants while San Onofre is offline. And it estimated to cost about, and I'm not sure what she said means about $1 million over 5 years, $1 billion over 5 years. In 2015, consumer costs were predicted to be 10.4 billion. I'm not sure I understand the question, so.
I didn't totally understand the numbers that she had in there either, but I'll point out or respond this way, that our analysis shows that the decommissioning trust do not, at least the Edison ones, and I'm sure that the other participants, co-participants are the same situation, do not need additional customer contributions, meaning that they're not currently paying for the decommissioning of songs and also paying for songs replacement power.
That your answer I understand, but I guess I wish she was online so she could explain this. But yes, customers will have to pay for power coming from somewhere else, but I don't know what her numbers mean on 1 billion versus 10 billion. So if she comes back online, maybe we can explain that, or she can explain that. Then I'll go along to her question number 4. Hearings are to be held every 3 years, and this has not been the case. There were 4 years between the 2016 and 2020. The public largely remains in the dark. And I assume she's talking about CPUC hearings.
Correct. That's what I assumed she was talking about. And I do want to point out that in January 2023, the PUC did hold hearings. And in fact, it held what they term a public participation hearing in January as well. The PUC requires that the decommissioning cost estimates be reviewed every 3 years, and the public is able to see those decommissioning cost estimates.
Okay. So there's not much we can do if it truly was 4 years between 2016 and 2020. We can't go back and have those hearings now. But like you say, we're on track now with 2023. So
correct.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Question number 5. With delays and rising costs of decommissioning and storage, it seems unlikely that there will be any unused money will be returned to the customer. I think you talked about this a little bit, but could you reiterate that too?
I sure will. So as I mentioned, it's a little bit too early to speculate as to whether there's going to be any unused money at the end of decommissioning. We still have a long period of time between 2024/5 through 2053, which is when we're forecasting that the decommissioning process would be completed, assuming the DOE takes the fuel. But whatever unused funds are available at that end of decommissioning, once the fuel is gone and the ISFC is removed, that will be returned to customers.
I don't think I'll be a customer by then, but you know, I'm not sure exactly how that'll work, but sorry, that was my own personal comment. Finally, Alice's question number 6. Any additional money needed must be raised and by administrative pay cuts and investments by SCE. So I guess she's thinking instead of charging the customer anymore, which we aren't, that the money needs to be found, any additional money needs to be found by cuts by Edison. Can you briefly, I think you've already covered this, but can you address that again?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we are not receiving any contributions for customers. That ended in 2016. And I'd also like to point out that the PUC reviews our trust fund analysis on a periodic basis. It matches the decommissioning cost estimate to go versus how much is in the trust fund, and makes a determination of whether additional customer contributions are needed. Again, I'd like to point out that our current analyses and all the way from 2016 have not shown a need for customer contributions.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we had Victor, do you want to cover the next one from?
You can go ahead and do it. If we get oral
Okay.
I'll start covering.
Okay. There was a question submitted by Van Snyder, and it covers, well, I'll just read it. It covers a lot of different stuff, but it kind of focuses on reprocessing. So let me read the whole question. Momentum continues to build with the recent action taken by the California State Senate and Assembly in support of Assembly Joint Resolution 18, which calls upon congressional leaders to fulfill the federal government's legal and contractual obligation to provide offsite storage and disposal solutions for spent nuclear fuel. Spent nuclear fuel is only 5% used. 5% of its fission products, among fission products, 9.26%, cesium and strontium, need custody for 300 years. Half the rest are innocuous before 30 years, and the remainder aren't even radioactive. An all-electric, all-nuclear American economy would produce 160 tons, less than 9 cement mixer truckloads, of cesium and strontium per year. We can handle that. Among the unused fuel, 1.1% is plutonium-239, which needs custody for 300,000 years. Some of the higher actinides also need long-term storage, but they're all fuel. And the uranium-238, which is the most unused part, is future fuel in the right kind of reactors. Fast neutron breeders such as GE Hitachi PRISM. And the obviously daft thing to do with spent fuel is to pretend that it can be hidden for 300,000 years. The pyramids were plundered before 500 years. The obviously correct thing to do is separate fission products from unused fuel and convert and I think that's where it ends, convert that to usable reprocessed fuel. So I think in getting up to it, I think the question is on reprocessing. And either Manuel or Jerry, can you?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So yeah, he goes through a lot of the technical details there that are, trying to get into the sausage of how reprocessing's done, and which isotopes are affected. There is one company in the U.S. that is producing isotopes, but that's not really reprocessing. So reprocessing was stopped in the United States in the 70s. And although there is, as Van points out here, there is a resurgence in interest in it. France has always and continues to be a leader in processing or recycling fuel from commercial reactors. And here in the U.S., there is a research bill working its way through Congress or through the Senate that proposes a project to explore the prospect of reprocessing here. There are still concerns about proliferation related to the plutonium. However, plutonium from a power reactor is not great for weapons use, and this concern should be solvable. But we don't have we really don't have a dog in this race, but we're keeping a close eye on it, and we'll keep track of anything that happens and see if we can take advantage of it.
Thank you. I'm glad that is again, personal comment. I'm glad we're keeping an eye on it rather than saying, no, we can't do that. It's not a hard no, we're keeping an eye on it because it does affect the future history here. And I see there's a couple, we've already talked to Rudy Salazar, and I do have a note here from Charles Langley saying my camera and mic appear to be deactivated. My question is this: Who was the hydrologist and where can we read the report?
Yeah, hi, Martha. This is Ron. Yeah, I'll respond to that question. Sorry that Charles can't speak to us, whatever the problem is there. Yeah, so Edison has hired an independent third party to help us assess the tritium in groundwater. As yet, there's not a report. We won't have a report of the investigation until after we finish it. That's at least months away. But as we move through the investigation, as I promised, we will keep you updated on what we're finding and what our next steps will be. So hopefully that answers Charles's question.
Well, seems to me he wanted to know who it was, and I understand the reluctancy to actually give a name, but I'm not sure that answers his question, but I'm glad that, you know, the report's going to be available when we have one. So
Yeah, when we, like I said, we will be open and transparent, and we'll share the results of that investigation, and we'll explain what we found and what we're doing about it. And we'll keep you, everyone, updated as we progress through the investigation.
okay, that's all I have from what was submitted. And
Martha?
yes,
Martha Manuel here, if I may. So Rudy did have wasn't really a question, but he made a suggestion about sharing the results of the Cal State Long Beach report. So if I may, I mean, I would be happy to take a look at the report. So Rudy, you have my contact information. Just send it to me, and I'll share it with the community engagement panel, and you know, we'll kind of take it from there. And consider the prospect of as you requested, time on an agenda. So I will make a commitment on behalf of the CEP, but please do send your report along when it's done. Thank you.
okay. I don't see anything else listed unless there's somebody waiting.
I don't see any. Emmanuel, I think you wanted to go and do some of the tours of the abandoned silver mines on Rudy's property. Is that correct?
I've seen those. I might pass out if I get down in those caverns. So, but there are some very interesting videos of Rudy walking into, or not walking, crawling through those shafts. So it is interesting.
So I drove through Ramsburg this summer on my way back from Mount Whitney, and I would take him up on that tour.
Okay, we've got one taker.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah. So, but let's see if I mean, if Charles, I see him actually listed twice. If we might give him one last chance to see if this system is working, where he could, if there's anything else he'd like to say or ask any other questions. Well, Charles, are you there? You want to give it another shot?
Hey, Dan, if
Yes.
Charles is listed twice, he should use one method, otherwise he'll get that background sound. So either choose the phone or the computer, and we'll make him a presenter if he wishes to speak. If he's on his phone, he can raise his hand. If he's on the computer, then we can open his mic.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine. I see now just one name.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been made the presenter right now.
Okay, he's a presenter now, so he should
Charles.
be able.
Yeah, he should be able to unmute himself for sure. We don't get an option. We just made him presenter, so he should be able to unmute.
Is it Charles Langley?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see him with his mic off and as a guest, so.
Okay, well, Charles, we're trying. I'm not quite sure what's happening, but we're sorry this doesn't seem to seem to be working.
Well, Dan, if I could suggest this, you know, for your consideration, Charles was able to send in a question regarding the hydrogeologist, so Ron addressed that. I could suggest that if there's anything else that Charles would like us to consider as part of this meeting, we can answer it in writing and post the question and the answer along with all the other material for this particular CEP meeting, if that works.
Okay, I think that's great. Otherwise, we could take this on an item. So let's go ahead then and move on to our next slide, please. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for their comments and questions. I think that they're very, very valuable. Okay, Mr. Bailey, any closing comments that you'd like to provide us with right now?
Sure, Mr. Stetson. Well, first, we'll be working we'll check if there are technical glitches that we can fix for the next time around. Just like you, I want to thank the panel members and the public for participating in tonight's meeting and asking questions about issues that are important to you. We very much appreciate the questions and the challenge, as always. We do value transparency, and we're working hard to provide you with facts, information, whether it's during the CEP meetings, tours, speaking engagements, or on our website. And as you saw here this evening, we continue to keep the CEP and the local communities up to date on the Tritium, as Ron committed to, and we'll be very transparent on what we find and what recommendations we receive from the hydrogeologists, and keep you posted on the status of decommissioning activities. I'd like to just move on to the next slide. Just a reminder that we have our website. That's songscommunity.com. You can also find us on various social media channels. And on the website, you can ask for a walking tour. So now with this, I'll turn it back over to you, Dan.
Okay, thank you very much, Fred. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Oh my gosh, we covered a lot of materials today, and early on I thought eventually that there wouldn't be a need for these meetings, that they'd eventually sunset, but as it turns out, that's not the case, that there's more topics that continue to come up that are of real interest to everyone. And we covered a number of those tonight. Number one, we want to thank Jose. He talked about the various funds. I thought that was most enlightening. I mean, learning about the Nuclear Decommissioning Trust that is responsible for the decommissioning of San Onofre. And I think the great news is that there is projected to be enough money to complete the decommissioning at Songs. And that's not the case at some other nuclear power plants around the country. I don't know how many of them, but we're very fortunate that we've got enough money in the local trust fund to do that. We learned about the nuclear waste fund, that there's, correct me if I'm wrong, something like $46 billion that's in that fund that's waiting to be properly utilized for hopefully CIS and hopefully long-term storage or permanent storage. And then we learned about the judgment fund, and that so far over $10.6 billion has been awarded through that fund, and that is growing at a rate of like over $2 million a day. We heard from Crystal Jabara, the Director of Community Relations for San Diego County, and she gave us a wonderful update in terms of what's happening with the spent fuel solutions, and also provided a preview on November 21st of a webinar that's going to be co-hosted by the coalitions and the Songs Community Engagement Panel, at which Congressman Levin will be discuss his bill. Number three, we had both Manuel and Jim provide us updates. Well, Manuel provided us on some updates of public interest, and Jim talked us through some of the interesting things that are happening there on site. And then, of course, Ron followed up with an update on the Tritium, and also what's happening in terms of the radiation that was discovered in terms of the rad monitoring. So gosh, we really covered a lot of materials today, and I look forward to our next meeting. So I don't know if I missed anything there.
Can I add one thing?
Of course, Victor.
Yeah, we had an election in this country, which means a lot of change. It probably means some change for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and other entities. And so we should watch that closely to see what kinds of change it means for this this industry and those groups that monitor this, because you know, when you get change of administration, you get a change of staff and personnel, and it may have a significant impact. Who knows what it has, but we know it will mean change. So we should just be aware of it and watch out for those, and meet the new administration that we'll be working with on all these projects.
Victor, that's an excellent point. And as I recall, I saw you on ABC News, and we want to thank you. And we're going to look to you for having your finger on the pulse of what's happening in Washington.
All right.
Manuel?
Just a quick note based on Victor's, solid comment, on point comment. Yeah, there will be significant change. We are tracking that. I had a call just today with an organization called the U.S. Nuclear Industry Council, but we will be monitoring on our own. There will be changes. Things like the positions like the Secretary of Energy, Assistant Deputy Secretaries of Energy, et cetera. The folks who are chairs of the committees of jurisdiction in the House and the Senate. The ranking members for the minority parties, will be changing. There's a lot, and so we will be tracking that over time and over the next several weeks and probably a couple of months as those appointments get made and leadership gets known in Congress. So certainly something that we will be tracking closely, because it does, as Victor sort of alludes to here, will have a significant impact, certainly as it relates to, the broader industry, but then also specifically to one of the topics near and dear to my heart, which is, the Nuclear Waste Policy Act and trying to, push for legislative reform.
Yeah.
Thank you. When I met with Paul Murray back in Washington, D.C., that was one of the first questions I asked him, if his position was subject to change during a possible change in administration. And his reply was, well, it's possible. He believed and certainly was hopeful that whoever was in the Oval Office, that he would be able to remain in that position. And I certainly hope that that's the case, because I think we've got the right guy there doing the job. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide, if we could, please. And Martha, thank you, because at the last meeting, I needed you because I really screwed this up. So let's take a look at, here's what our schedule is for our 2024 scheduled meeting. So we're just finishing up and completed our November 7th meeting. And the CEP members are going to be getting together on December 10th. At that time, we're going to be reviewing this past year, and we're going to be talking about things for the agenda for our upcoming year. So I'd like to suggest to everyone to reach out to their local CEP member if there's anything that they'd like us to discuss and put on the agenda for the upcoming year. So let's see, next slide, please. And then here we have a tentative agenda for 2025. Looking forward to that. So first one, we haven't set the dates yet. So, but we're good. In our first meeting, we talked about emergency preparedness and planning. Let's see, then we're going to have, of course, another consultation meeting. Second meeting right now, we're going to be talking about the Spent Fuel Solutions Coalition joint meeting, DOE Federal Spent Fuel Management Program. Third quarter, songs dismantlement update, my San Onofre and decommissioning solutions. And fourth meeting will be about the songs environmental stewardship, something we try to cover every year. And again, at the end of the year, we'll be working with the CEP on member consultation. Of course, this is subject to change. And we certainly, I think with Congressman Levin's legislation being proposed, that that'll be an ongoing topic that we can hopefully bring some updates during the upcoming year. So with that, let's move on to the next slide. And so once again, I just want to thank everyone for their valued participation. Once again, our thoughts and prayers are those who are out that have been affected by the fires. We hope that the winds die down and that there is some resolution in terms of being able to relocate and get their lives back on track again. So if there's nothing else, I just want to wish everyone a very safe and thankful Thanksgiving, and we look forward to seeing you in the near future. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.